Our long national nightmare is over. Week 1 of the NFL season is upon us. Time to get those fantasy lineups set. We're going to help you out. 5 guys I am making sure are in my lineup this weekend. We're starting at the tight end position, and hopefully this one is fairly obvious. You drafted him to be a starter, but given where he was going, you probably added another tight end. Maybe you have a little bit of a decision to make. I'm getting David Njoku in every lineup. That includes DFS. I think he is going to be very popular in DFS contests, really the Browns in general. This might be the best spot on their schedule this season, but it's the Cleveland Browns, right? It's always a team in turmoil. You got quarterback issues, you got running back issues. The team is projected to be one of the worst in the NFL. So it's always going to be a little shaky putting a Brown in your lineup. I'm telling you though, not this week. Week 1, Cincinnati, the worst defense in the NFL last season against the tight end position, gave up a full fantasy point more per game than the next worst defense against tight ends. Since he was at or near the bottom of the league in just about every category with the tight end position, catches, yards, touchdowns, catch percentage allowed to tight ends. Browns are at home here. Bengals defense, I don't think it's going to be really any better than it was last year. It looked terrible throughout the preseason. You got Joe Flacco back there slinging it. I love David Njoku this week. Might be a little bit more of a decision week to week going forward as the schedule stiffens up. But for this week, I am very comfortable starting David Njoku, starting Jerry Jeudy, Jerome Ford even. Hopefully he's the starter in Cleveland, but this is a great spot to use those Cleveland Browns. All right, next up, we got a pair of rookie wide receivers. We'll start with Matthew Golden in Green Bay. Now, the Packers have major question marks at wide receiver overall heading into week 1. Jaden Reed, a DNP at practice on Wednesday. We'll see. He says he's going to play through the Jones fracture in his foot. Could be a maintenance stay. Either way, he's playing through a fracture in his foot. Could be limited. Could be something that bothers him throughout the season. You got Christian Watson out until the middle of the year. Dontavian Wicks, he's nursing a calf injury. So we're looking at a very real scenario in which Matthew Golden is the Packers wide receiver 1 to open this season. Now, you get a tough matchup against Detroit, much healthier defense compared to the second half, at least, of last season. But even so, no defense gave up more fantasy points to wide receivers last year than the Detroit Lions. And look, Green Bay, I don't think they're going to be able to get away with pounding Josh Jacobs 20 to 25 times. Jordan Love is going to have to take some shots, push the ball downfield. That is where Matthew Golden excels. I think you got to get him in your lineup with all the questions at receiver. All right, the other rookie wide receiver we got to talk about, Emeka Egbuka. I think you got to find a way to get Egbuka in your lineup. And look, based on where he's been going lately in drafts, this might seem like a no-brainer, but if you drafted early, even if you drafted recently and you went receiver to start your draft, you're in a league where you only start 2 receivers and a flex, you might have a decision to make. You got to get Egbuka in there. No Godwin, no McMillan. He's going to occupy the slot alongside Mike Evans. Going up against the Falcons, divisional game in week 1. They do have to go on the road, but you're playing in the Dome. Falcons gave up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers last season, 2nd highest catch percentage, gave up an NFL high 22 touchdowns to the wide receiver position. Egbuka was getting hyped for a reason. Looked great in the preseason. Haven't heard a bad thing about him in training camp. I think you got to cash in on Emeka Egbuka early on before Chris Godwin comes back. A couple running backs I want to get to. Tony Pollard of the Tennessee Titans. So this is a tough one for me because I don't have high expectations for Tennessee, especially this week going up against what might be the best overall defense in the NFL in the Denver Broncos. And look, given where Pollard was going in drafts, particularly where he was going earlier in draft season, you may have drafted him to not be your regular starter, maybe your RB3, even your RB4. And look, again, the matchup against Denver, it's a little daunting. Titans are big underdogs on the road, but Pollard's the only show in town. His backup, Tajay Spears, is injured. He's going to miss a few weeks to begin the year. This should be firmly Tony Pollard's backfield. I'm not expecting a ton on the ground against a very good Denver defense. Titans will likely be playing from behind, but you got a rookie quarterback in there in Cam Ward. Don't be surprised if the Titans play this a little bit conservatively. We see a lot of checkdowns, a lot of pass catching opportunities for Tony Pollard. And keep in mind, Denver ranked in the top 5 in catches and yards allowed to running backs last season, top 10 in yards per target allowed to running backs as receivers. We'll need to see some volume here. 2 catches for 15 yards, that's not going to get it done. But if he can see 4 or 5 receptions, I think that could be the case in this matchup. And look, if you're going a little bit deeper, if you're in a deeper league where you got to start multiple running backs or one of those leagues where you have a bunch of flexes, don't mind rolling Travis Etienne out there either against that Carolina defense. One more running back I've been high on throughout draft season, Isiah Pacheco of the Kansas City Chiefs. So you probably drafted Pacheco as your RB3 or RB4. I'd think about getting him out there this week. Chiefs play the Friday night game in Sao Paulo against the LA Chargers. I'm just not sure we see a ton of passing explosion from KC, at least early in the season. Once Rashee Rice is back from the suspension, once he's fully up to speed, then we maybe revert back to the Chiefs of old. But I don't really see how Kansas City does that without the services of Rice. It's not necessarily an ideal matchup going up against the Chargers, one of the better fantasy defenses against running backs last season. But when you dig in on the numbers, a lot of that is really just rooted in touchdown prevention. They only gave up 7 total rushing touchdowns as a team, only 4 of those to the running back position. Look, props to the Chargers. That's a crazy low number. I don't think that's going to happen again. That seems like one of those numbers that year over year, probably not going to be sustainable. When you look a little bit deeper, Chargers did give up over 4.6 yards per carry to running backs. They were closer to the middle of the pack in terms of EPA. They also gave up the most targets and the 5th most receptions to the running back position a year ago. With Pacheco, you're getting a discount compared to where he was going last year. Back fully healthy now. Never really saw him at full form when he came back late last season. But keep in mind, before going down, when he got injured in week 2, 34 carries, 7 catches over the first 2 weeks of the season. I like Pacheco to really reassert himself as the guy we thought he could be heading into last year. All right, I got one more bonus start for you where we're digging deep here. We're going to a team defense. Make sure you get the Cardinals defense in your lineup. I'm still seeing the Cardinals go undrafted in some leagues. They're still available in more than 50% of ESPN leagues as of Wednesday. I'm someone who loves to stream defenses, play the matchups week to week. I don't want to burn a valuable draft pick on a defense. I'm always waiting until the last round or two. But you can use Arizona this week. You can use Arizona next week. Nobody has a friendlier first 2 weeks than the Arizona Cardinals. You get the Saints in New Orleans on Sunday, then home for Carolina in week 2. Already an underrated defense last season. Invested a ton into that unit over the summer. Brought in Josh Sweat, brought in Dalvin Tomlinson, Calais Campbell, used 2 early picks on the defense. If the Cardinals are out there, double check. They might be available in your league. I'm starting the Cardinals defense everywhere I can this week against the Saints. I'm doing the same next week against Carolina.